In a previous episode of the Knife and Fork Show, we talked about the basic processes by which ingredients can receive approval for use in food in the United States. And I made a lot of bad pot jokes about the title given to these ingredients since they are generally recognized as safe or GRAS. I apologize for going for the cheap laugh. Today, as we prepare for the new year, I thought it would be good to talk about some of the trends and patterns that have been emerging that might shape what we see in the food additive approvals area over the next year. Hello. I'm Jason Huffman, Editor-in-Chief of Food Chemical News. When it comes to talking about food additives, you just can't get much better sources than the two guys who are joining us today. Mitchell Cheeseman was until recently the acting director of FDA's Office of Food Additives, an office where he worked for 8 years. Before that, he ran as a director FDA's Division of Food Contact Notifications. Ralph Simmons, a former food policy analyst at the Office of Food Additive Safety, has 35 years of FDA regulation experience. Mitch is now the managing director, and Ralph a partner at Steptoe & Johnson, a law firm that focuses on food regulation. And as I mentioned earlier, we consult them regularly for help in our Food Chemical News articles on food additives. Mitch and Ralph, looking into the crystal ball for the year ahead, what do you see coming up in the next 12 months or so in relation to food additives, food additive regulations? Maybe we could start with the Pew Initiative.
Right, the Pew Initiatives is something I'm very familiar with because one of my functions at FDA was to be liaison between the Office of Food Additive Safety and the Pew Initiative. As you know, the Pew Charitable Trusts are a well-funded family trust, and they have many interests. One of them is in the health area, right. And specifically they embarked in 2010 on a 3-year program to look at the way FDA regulates food additives. Which includes both direct additives and packaging materials. And they've conducted several workshops to look at risk assessment procedures at FDA, to look at exposure assessment procedures at FDA. As you know, the risk management process looks first at the risk assessment, which means focuses on toxicology, and then looks at exposure and measures the exposure against what's been determined about the toxicology. So they looked at both of those, conducted a workshop, and now they're in the position of making recommendations to their board, which will turn into policy recommendations about changes at FDA in terms of the way food additives are regulated. They have particular interest in generally recognized as safe or GRAS substances, where they're concerned that FDA doesn't get to look at all GRAS determinations. Right. A lot of them are made by companies. It's
a very industry-driven process right now.
Yes, right, and that's a major concern of Pew, and we would expect that Pew will come out with recommendations that would affect the GRAS issue, the GRAS process.
So what are we likely to see in the upcoming year from Pew? What do you think in terms of the timing? What's going to happen next?
We'd expect to see policy recommendations probably in early 2013, and then you can expect Pew to push those policy recommendations on the Hill and at FDA aggressively. They have contacts at both places, both on the Hill and at FDA, and they can be expected to push their recommendations vigorously.
Do they have a lot of influence in this area?
They have a considerable influence in both the Hill and maybe to a little lesser extent at FDA, but they have friends in high places at FDA as well. So they can have influence in both areas, and we would expect them to use it. Particularly on things like GRAS determinations, where they want more transparency, is the term that everybody uses these days. Right. Want to see more transparency in terms of who makes GRAS determinations, how many of them are made, and they want to see FDA more involved in GRAS determinations.
Well, that's something that it will be exciting to look for in 2013. That's for sure. What else is going on?
Well, I think in addition to the Pew effort in relation to GRAS, the GRAS program at FDA has actually been under scrutiny for a number of years. This goes back to congressional interest in 2007, 2008 with respect to some decisions that were made in the GRAS notification process, and also builds on a GAO audit that was completed in 2010 and led in part to Pew's project on food additives. That GAO report made a number of recommendations, including that FDA undertake efforts to increase its knowledge of GRAS ingredients and GRAS determinations that had been made in the marketplace. And this is a theme that, one of the themes that Pew has picked up. In addition, one concern with respect to GRAS is the fact that these determinations are made by industry. They're made by scientists or consultants who are actually employed by the industry. And so one question that was raised by GAO and that has also been evident in Pew workshops is the issue of conflict of interest. Right. Both GAO and Pew have spoken about the need for FDA to potentially develop guidance to inform these assessments. In addition, beyond GRAS,
I know you guys want to talk about post-market actions that FDA has been taking recently and some of the stress that they've had in that area.
That actually is related to GRAS. One of the concerns gives me a good transition. One of the concerns with respect to GRAS is FDA's ability to go back and do post-market oversight. Two major areas of interest for post-market oversight in FDA's current food strategic plan deal with GRAS ingredients. One deals with sodium, salt consumption, the other with trans fat, and particularly with the consumption of added trans fat, because we have both naturally occurring and added trans fat.
So are we expecting FDA to talk about those two issues in the near future?
Absolutely. I would expect FDA to make concrete steps in both of those areas. In 2013, they've been looking at sodium and looking at trans fat for several years. And although they're complex issues, they have begun to put together a plan and approach to address the public health concerns surrounding those issues.
No, there's a packaging issue that just doesn't seem to go away, and it's been hanging around. BPA. Where are we going to see on BPA this year?
Well, that's hard to say. FDA has been assessing studies on BPA for nearly 5 years now. They've published a draft assessment. Earlier this year, they responded to a citizen petition for the National Resources Defense Council. So far, FDA has maintained the safety of BPA in food contact material. Hopefully, the agency will come to a more final assessment, but I don't know that that's really on the table for 2013, given how politically charged that issue is.
Okay. That's it. Out of time. Thanks to Mitch Cheeseman and Ralph Simmons for joining us twice on the Knife and Fork Show. Food Chem News readers, of course, should keep an eye open for our regulatory look ahead for food additives and other issues in a coming edition of our publication. For the rest of you, we'll soon bring another personality from the world of food regulation into our studio. See you again soon.
crisis.